walked past it as kids, so it's something I've seen growing up, and it's been in the same state of disrepair. There's probably an entire community of people that don't know that history is right there buried under their nose. It started out as a low-income burial site for indigents in Knoxville.
There are people of every race, Irish, Catholic, Welsh, African American, and others who were more of a minority group at that time. When they were laid to rest here, we basically neglected the land, we've neglected the honor of these people.
And Catherine Ambrosiak, a professor in the College of Architecture who specializes in memorial parks, she has taken on the project of developing a memorial park in Oddfellows Cemetery.
Oddfellows is a fraternal order. The Oddfellows group in Knoxville was established in 1880. That's the date also that the cemetery was first established. In this area there is actually a large collection of cemeteries. There's Cavalry Cemetery, which is Catholic cemetery. There's a Confederate cemetery. There's Pottersfield, otherwise known as County Cemetery, and then Oddfellows Cemetery. The Fraternal Order was a benevolent group of citizens who had a mission composed of 4 different objectives. One was to take care of the sick, another was to educate the orphan, another was to look after the widow, and the 4th was to bury the dead. The burying of the dead was in order to give honor to citizens who wouldn't necessarily be able to afford a funeral of their own. Citizens at this point would have ended up in some place called a Potter's Field. I believe that the Oddfellows Cemetery is actually in direct reaction to the establishment of that cemetery, because citizens saw that people were being laid to rest without any honor. Oddfellows in Knoxville ceased to exist during the Great Depression. According to the tax records, there's no ownership of the cemetery, and that's part of the problem, is that the city can't look for someone to officially take it and maintain it.
It's been in the same state of disrepair, so it was something we saw as something we could improve on in Knoxville. The greatest danger right now is the continued degradation of it. That you can drive through there now and see the weeds, the trash being dropped.
Just to clean it up is not going to be enough, because the weeds are going to come back.
The tombstones that have been knocked over, run over, broken, and that's probably the greatest danger, is history neglected can be destroyed or eventually disappear.
One of the things that we hope to do is redesign the landscape here. There's a great deal of water that comes down from the Dandridge area, and so we'll see large pockets where land has just been washed away. Several of the headstones have disappeared over time, and so we don't know, based on headstones, where people are necessarily buried. We know that there are a number more bodies here than headstones. Probably in the range of, for every 1 headstone you see, there are probably 4 or 5 other burials which are not marked. One of the studies that we're doing within the cemetery is called ground penetrating radar, and what that does is actually looks into the earth to see where earth has been disturbed or where there's some density, which would indicate that there's likely a burial that has occurred there. How do you perpetually maintain a land like this? And part of it is to make it a useful area for the community so that they can start to interact here. One of the hopes through Knox Heritage is to start to establish the Friends of Oddfellow Cemeteries.
The most outstanding person I could think of is Cal Johnson.
Cal Johnson's family plot is over on the north side of the cemetery.
The entire Johnson family is buried in there, and it's one of the few that has a fence around it, but it again is in great disarray. And he was the first black millionaire in Knoxville, if not in the state or the country.
Cal Johnson was a former slave and the first black millionaire in East Tennessee. And he established this cemetery for his mother and father, and then it grew from there. He's buried here, and so are his first and second wives. The easiest thing would be to just clear cut, poison what's here, plant anew. But we have to be careful with that kind of attitude, mainly because there are some specimens of plants here that historically are part of the cemetery. And this is likely an example. This is the yucca plant, which also is part of an African tradition of planting in cemeteries or at grave sites. And one of the things that I had read about the yucca plant was that it was used because the spikiness of the leaves were meant to ward off evil spirits. So it's very symbolic.
Some of the tombstones themselves are relics in that African burial tradition. They didn't use standard tombstones. They would take soft concrete stones and press articles that belonged to the person into the stone.
These two headstones are unique to the cemetery because they combine an African tradition of placing pottery in the concrete. It's a tradition then that would have been passed through to Americans through slavery and then carried over. So it may be that these are former slaves that are buried here, but we don't have the documentation on that. The pottery that's actually embedded may have been from the collection of their own dishes.
What we would like to see is an improvement in the appearance and an uplifting in the community. Our Oddfellow Scholars program was based on a friend of mine walking back from Vine Junior High School, and we were kids walking past the cemetery. And over the years, the cemetery remained in the same state of disrepair for our 50 years.
The Oddfellow Scholars program is a summer program that takes a group of children. They are learning about their community, and part of that is to learn about people who are buried here in the cemetery.
And that's based on the idea of using the cemetery as a vehicle to uplift the kids and the community by drawing on the knowledge and the history in the cemetery and using it as a subject for the kids to do research on, to study, to learn to write, to learn to communicate, to learn to interview, and that way improve their educational skills for further advancement in schools.
They are learning about their community, and part of that is to learn about people who are buried here in the cemetery. What they're asked to do is to write a short essay. One of the essays is about someone in their family, and one of the essays is about someone that's buried either in Oddfellow Cemetery or one of the surrounding cemeteries. The goal of this is to allow them to develop their creative writing skills, verbal skills in terms of interviews, and then writing, research and writing, and they are given a computer that they're then able to keep after the summer.
What they learned was the history of Knoxville based on the knowledge gained in the cemetery. Their occupations, their family histories, the history of the cost of a cemetery in the 1800s, the history of what they died of, the ages of the people buried there. That can change his or her life in future educational opportunities. Oddfellows Cemetery is unique to any other cemetery in the city. The cemetery lies between Walter P. Taylor Homes and Walter Hardy Park.
We were researching the cemetery, and we came in February of 2008 and staged an illumination event.
the sun went down and it got dark, it became breathtaking. They decorated about 500 bags, and some of them turned out pretty good. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. A child traced his hand on a bag, put faith, hope, charity, grace, and love on the fingers, and the bag was placed on top of a grave site, and the candle was lit. Well, the next step is going to be to take these 5 kids and give them something more challenging to write about, something more challenging in their education, so they can continue to advance. We're trying to get the community involved, get the community interested, get the community to understand that it's for them, it's for their betterment. Our original goal was really to set it up and turn it over to the community, turn it over to a community group. I'm confident it can be done.
In the cemetery area where the gravestones for the most part have fallen or have disappeared or were just never marked, there are people of every race. Though they couldn't afford a proper burial, they could have been poets, they could have been doctors, they could have been wonderful mothers and fathers.